All right, we're here for another episode, or yeah, okay, let me start over.
I'm like, I don't even know what this is.
I know, I'm like, what are we talking about?
Oh, do you have your microphone on? I need to look at. I think mine.
I haven't gotten a new one yet. My goal is to get it before our next big.
Okay, well, mine is on. We'll see if it makes any difference.
I I've had a crazy couple weeks
Well, hey, we're surviving. We're thriving.
driving. Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Money Honey, the best podcast in the world on investing. We are doing a once a month longer podcast, but we decided that we have so much to talk about. We also want to do intermittently mini podcast episodes where we talk about a short topic and get really in depth on it, but don't go too long. So, about 10 minutes on something we feel really passionate. So, Holly, what are we talking about today?
So, we are actually talking about misinformation that we are finding throughout the internet. And I think we're talking about this because one, you see a lot of misinformation pertaining to financial investment, but two, I think this is like our pet peeve. Something that we just kind of want to discuss and we will try and keep this to 10 minutes, but I know that this is something that Elise and I can really just get on a soapbox about and talk about for a long time.
Absolutely. And I think I see a lot on social media, but also my friends who know that I'm a financial advisor, they'll send me things, be like,
Absolutely.
oh, this good advice.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Elise, what is one of the trends that you're seeing right now on throughout social media that you feel like just needs to be addressed?
The first one I want to bring up is girl math. And we've all heard of it. Maybe we don't all know what it is, but it's kind of a justification to bad spending habits. So, one of the core girl math things is cash is free. So, if you're using cash, it doesn't count.
Yes. Yes. I actually think that the reels that I watch with Girl Math, they're hilarious. I
Mhm.
love them and it cracks me up. However, the reality of it is it's so inaccurate. I mean, if you're spending cash, you're still spending money. Another one that I've seen is if you're using a card, it's free. No, you're paying that card off, I hope, at some point during the month. If not, you're gonna be hit with so much interest. One of the things that with the girl math that I can say that I am probably gonna use this year is birthdays. No matter what, you can just pick whatever birthday you want that you're gonna and since I know what age is about to hit me, I will probably still be in my early 30s.
I mean, more power to you. I have my big 3-0 birthday this year, so I'm officially in my 30s. After but the thing with girl math is I really get it, especially because obviously we're girls, but it's expensive being a woman. And I think just especially after being married to my husband and looking at like what he buys versus what I buy, I'm like, what do you mean that was only $5? When I buy a razor, it's $15. So
Absolutely.
there is a cost to being a woman that we don't even realize is happening. Most consumer staples are marked up for women, and you don't even realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, even in the dating world, it's been funny for me to think that I have to buy new clothes. My hair has to be done on a regular basis. I like to have my nails done. And so, going on a date with a guy, they have to just show up and sometimes they have to fix their hair and sometimes they don't. New clothes is never really, I'm sure, a consideration for them. So it is, again, I would just like to say I understand the girl math. I think it's hilarious, but trying to justify overspending, you it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and I think a core principle of investing and kind of saving for that future self is living below your means. And I tell my clients all the time when they get a raise, I'm like, don't change anything.
Mhm.
Keep living the exact same as you were and save that extra money, and you'll be so thankful. But it's
Yes,
really
absolutely.
hard to do that.
Yes. So another trend that I have seen is bougie broke, which again, I absolutely find it hilarious. I laugh at every one of these reels and I think that they're So creative. Elise, if you can describe for the people that don't know what bougie broke is.
Yes, I saw this one video. And I never got over it, but it was I'm a rich person trapped in a poor person's body.
And they're
I
normally
think
like,
that's the definition of Bushi.
yeah, so they're normally like recording this at like an exotic place. It's basically people that do not have the money to go on vacations or that do not have the money to drive the vehicle that they're driving or wear the clothes that they're wearing. A lot of the reels that I've seen have been women carrying Louis Vuitton bags and whatever type of designer sunglasses. And I think a lot of us, we like to buy designer items. I'm not against that. But I guess my recommendation as a financial advisor is don't do it unless you can afford it.
Absolutely. And maybe don't do it, all the time. Maybe buy one
Yes.
bag that you know you're going to love and use all the time and not, 10.
Yes, absolutely. So back, and I'm going to tell myself, back a few years ago, I was in Mexico and I bought these fake Ray-Bans
Mhm.
and I paid like, I don't know, $15 for them. And I took them into a store and put them next to the authentic Ray-Bans. Now, I will say the authentic Ray-Bans were much better quality, but just putting them next, like side by side, you couldn't even tell the difference. And so I would just always say, if you can't afford it, just don't. Don't.
And there
It's not
are
worth it in retirement.
absolutely. And there are ways to be creative. Like
Mhm.
buying secondhand. My sister has a secondhand Louis Vuitton bag that looks brand new. And
Yes.
she paid a quarter of the price. So there are ways around it to kind of get that lifestyle you want
Yes.
without having to pay those big numbers.
And I think that's even very relevant when we talk about vehicles. When you buy a brand new vehicle, oh my goodness, the amount that it depreciates when you just drive it off the lot is ridiculous. But you can normally find a used vehicle a few years old that will work just fine and it's going to be a lot less. So, again, just keeping these goals realistic and within your budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are all fun topics, but let's get into trading. How does social media display trading? Like what's that misinformation look like in terms of the stock market itself?
Well, I think we had a prime example this week. So, it has been hitting the high line about the um, Bitcoin ETF that has been okay, Elise.
I just want to once more say we are financial advisors, we're not influencers, social media stars. So
Yes. And
give us
so,
a
okay. So the Bitcoin ETF was supposed to be released, and we knew that maybe it was going to be approved, maybe it was going to be declined.
Mhm.
And then, surprisingly, of all accounts, it was the SEC's account that, and I don't know whether to call it Twitter, if you want to call it the X account, whatever
Yeah,
you want to call this, it got hacked.
I know.
And it was stating that this Bitcoin ETF had been approved when it hadn't been. So what we saw was Bitcoin's value go sky high. And then about an hour later, oh, whoops, this hasn't happened yet. And so one thing that I would just like to say is as much as I like Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, you cannot necessarily believe everything that's being posted on there. You really need to check news stations, which was so bad in this is there were news stations that were also saying, because based on this tweet, that the Bitcoin ETF was approved. Now, fast forward a few days, yes, it did eventually get approved. But you can see in the midst of this hacking what it can do to the market easily.
Absolutely. And I think just in general with the market, the news says one thing and the market does a totally different thing. And if you just listened to the news last year, you would think that the stock market had gone down 50%. Like there was so much bad news out there that it was going to be a horrible year. We were going to go into a recession, et cetera, et cetera. But we actually ended up with the S&P 500 up 26% for 2023. And looking at those numbers, all those big, banks,
Mhm.
financial investing offices, they all claimed that it was going to be a much less year. Morgan Stanley said it will only be up 1%. Barclays said it would be down 4%. And all of them were wrong, which, you're trying to predict something that's very hard to predict. So that's pretty normal. But it's just good to take everything you hear on the news with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and one thing that has been known in the past is election years are filled with misinformation.
Mhm.
So we know going into 2024, the news is going to be inaccurate. And I think that as accounts are being hacked, as alleged voting has been hacked. I mean, it's just this year I think is going to be crazy. So I think it's going to be even more important to verify any sources that you see on the internet.
Absolutely. And just, this is for our clients and also people thinking of working with us. We're available. And I love when a client is nervous and calls me and we can just talk it out and we can look at their account and see how it's doing because it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to get scared, but then also just going back and looking at what you're doing, staying the course and getting that grounding is so important.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing to also say that a lot of our portfolios they're balanced.
Mhm.
And we will normally tell you you've got to stay vested in something. And I do agree that Elisa said that we want our clients to call us. In fact, I have potential clients that are still working, and I cannot even manage the retirement account right now. But so many of them were tempted to just take their money that's been vested and throw it in their money market. And we would just talk through it, and luckily that especially at the end of the year when I feel like the volatility was really bad, they ended up staying invested, and that was when we saw the market just go up the highest was towards the end. And there is one quote that I always just tell people, and I have it pinned, and, it's, "Did you know that the S&P's 500 index annual return for the past 30 years was 7.7%? But if you missed investing in just 2 of the best days each year, your return would only be 1%. So again, it's so important for you to just stay vested and to work with a financial advisor. And again, Elise and I are here to walk you through and to create an investment plan. And again, we've said this several times, the stock market may not be what's ideal for you, but we've got to come up with some sort of plan.
Absolutely. And there are plenty of options past the stock market. And just to remind you guys one more time, there's so many things that scare us, but the stock market has doubled in the past 5 years. And that's with the COVID crash. That's with inflation. That's with Ukraine. That's with Israel. That's with the Capitol riots. There's so many things, the banking crisis. And through it all, the stock market performs.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we also have to be really leery of is finding financial advice on just whether it be reels. Some of my favorite that's being sent to me is financial advice that's on TikTok videos about telling you how to invest. And so I think it's important that if you see some of this stuff, call a financial advisor and see if there's any accuracy to it. I know I had someone send me a reel back a few months ago that was basically like if you buy this single premium life annuity, how it's going to turn into millions. It, and yeah, it could potentially if you live to your 90 or 95, but what happens if you pass away at 60 or 65? And I'm not saying that's not good for some people that's willing to take on that risk, but you have to understand the risk. And sometimes these videos and these reels, they don't lay it all out there for you, and you don't understand what you're even getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're watching someone's video, look and see if they're licensed, right?
Mhm.
If they're registered with FINRA and SIPC, that's a good sign. If they're not, chances are they're not a licensed financial advisor and they're just spewing information. So it's good to know where your resources are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that I don't know of any brokerage company that will allow a financial advisor to use TikTok. LPL is very strict on what we can use. We just got Instagram passed last year to be part of a pilot program. It's not even open to everyone. And so we're able to post on Twitter or X, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And so, as these TikTok reels, and some of the advice probably is good, but just be sure to just check the accuracy that's coming from it.
Absolutely. It's always good to get a second opinion. And Holly and I both offer second opinion services where you can just, even if you're working with a financial advisor and you just want a gut check, you can come in and get a second opinion on what you're doing. Make sure it's right.
And that doesn't cost anything. That's just like an initial consultation. You just want a second set of eyes to look over your information.
Awesome. Well, that was a great little mini session. I think we covered a lot.
I think so too.
All right. Well, tune in for our February episode, which will be a deeper dive, and keep listening.